that was when the realization was there that, oh my gosh, this debt is going to take over our life and we're about to lose everything that we've worked so hard for. So the zero-based budgeting method is a budgeting method that I learned from Dave Ramsey, but it's quite a popular method. So I think when you come at it as a, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've done this, or, in a way that you're kind of making them feel worse about what they've done, they're less likely to open up about it.
Welcome all to our financial wellness podcast, From Roots to Fruits, where we nurture our roots to grow more delicious fruits. I'm your host, Arlyne. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I am joined by someone that I have been following online for a while now, and she's doing amazing in the financial education space and being open about discussing her situation and getting out of some debt. So we're going to get into that today. She is a finance educator and a digital marketing specialist and the host of Not Another Money podcast. Welcome, Tolu.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Arlyne. I'm really excited for today's conversation.
So am I, excited to learn about your journey. And I'm hoping that everybody that's listening is going to kind of gain loads of hints and tips about kind of improving their finances, because I think what you've done is really inspirational. But before we get into it, do you mind just sharing your journey to financial education?
I'm sure. So, like you said, my name is Tolu Frimpong. I'm a financial educator, but my background wasn't in financial education. My background's actually in marketing. So, I've been a marketer now for the past 15 years almost. But personal finance is something I ended up having. Education, rather, is a journey I went on when I learnt about money for myself. So, I got myself into a big amount of debt. I went on a whole journey of learning about money and learning how to pay off that debt. And once I paid off that debt, I decided to start sharing what the steps that I'd taken to pay off that debt online with others to help other people to overcome debt in the way that I was able to do.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, it's hard for people to make that decision as well, that I need to fix things and this is where it starts and let me go and get educated. Even better that now you're helping other people to do it. But was there kind of a big shift that helped you know that, okay, I think this debt has gotten too big now? Was there an aha moment for you?
There was definitely an aha moment. It was when we got to the stage of not being able to keep up with our mortgage payments and defaulting on our payment a couple of consecutive months. That was when the realization was there that, oh my gosh, this debt is going to take over our life and we're about to lose everything that we've worked so hard for. So just to give a bit of context to our situation, we ended up in over £36,000 worth of debt when we bought our first home. So we had all the money that we needed to buy that first home. We had money for solicitors' fees, deposit, stamp duty, etc. But what we hadn't factored into the equation was renovations. And that's because initially when we bought that home, we weren't going to need to do so much work to it. The plan was to kind of do it bit by bit once we moved in. But there was basically about a year between when we got our offer accepted and when we got our keys. And during that time, the previous owners basically wrecked the house. I'm talking the kitchen and roof, had caved in and it was just a mess. But there was no moving in. It was not habitable at all. So that's how we ended up getting into that initial amount of debt. And I think one thing with money that's not yours, you spend it a lot more frivolously than you perhaps would if it's money you worked for. At least that was the case in our situation. So we were just spending and doing things that we wouldn't have done if it was our own money. So the debt that initially started off as a £10,000 loan quickly ended up as £36,000 because we were there paying for things on credit, so paying for holidays, which we had no business going on, refurbishing the house, buying the nicest of furniture and things for the home. So it just spiraled out of control. So once we paid off all that debt, once we got into all that debt, and then it got to the point that we were unable to keep up with our house payments, it was around that time that we realized that, no, we need to do something about this because we spent all this money on this house, all our life savings has gone into this home, and we're at the verge of losing it all. So that was kind of what made us embark on that journey. But what actually helped us to embark on that journey was a book that my husband came across called The Total Money Makeover by an author named Dave Ramsey. I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with him, but he talks a lot about money online. And when we read that book, that was the book that made us think, wow, we can actually do something about this debt situation. So that book was quite revolutionary in our debt-free journey, I would say.
I definitely wrote that down and we'll share a link for everybody to just check it out too, because I haven't read it. But it's great that it's something that sparked that and helped you on your journey together with your husband too, which is something I wanted to touch on because I think a lot of people find it hard to talk about money in general, let alone with their family members as well as their partner. Is there something that you could advise people to kind of help them bridge that gap so that they can start to discuss finances with their partners?
Yes, I would say not to be judgmental towards one another when it comes to money and debt. So I think timing it wisely is also important. So the time that you approach that conversation is important, and the way in which you approach that conversation equally is important too. So I think when you come at it as a, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've done this, or, in a way that you're kind of making them feel worse about what they've done, they're less likely to open up about it. But if it's more in a helpful, like, what can we do about it? Like, where are you now? Like, what can I do to help you to overcome this? I feel like the other person feels more comfortable to open up about it. So I think removing the judgment is important, and making a safe space to have that conversation, I think, is important too. And I think also maybe writing things down as well. So sometimes we're not able to vocalize what we feel, or how we're feeling about our money, but maybe just writing it down. I know it sounds very old school to write a letter, but you could even do it as an SMS, text message, email, whatever way works for you in terms of communicating your thoughts and feelings about money. So whether you're that person that has all that debt, or you're equally that person in a relationship where your partner has that debt, just writing it down so that you can communicate your thoughts and feelings about the situation, so you can then open up the floor for that discussion.
That's a good point. Sometimes it's really hard for me to confront people unless it's like now it's got into a certain stage and you don't want to leave it until it's that bad. But that tip to write it down is a good one because it removes that kind of looking at their reaction and
Exactly.
also opens up the space so people can have a think to like, okay, what's my comeback to this? But as you said, removing the judgment so that you can have a product conversation. I think yeah, that's really good. So I'm glad that you guys could do that, and also you're sharing that for people because I think it's one of the biggest things for couples to speak about money, especially if it's about debt, which is tough anyway, and not blaming each other. So that's really great that you guys did that. And then, yeah, the £36,000 that you mentioned, it's a really, really big number for some people. And other people have massive amounts of debt depending on how much they're earning. And you, in your like answer before, you mentioned that it's the holidays, your lifestyle just changes depending on how much you have. So that's another point I think that I wanted to touch on. Like, how can people prevent themselves from getting into massive amounts of debt, especially when they see their income increase?
That's a loaded question, definitely. I think there's a lot of things that we can do if we find ourselves in that position. I think one thing that's so important is to have goals. So I think when you have financial goals and a plan for your money, you're less likely to fall for that low hanging fruit and those opportunities right in front of you, because you have that bigger picture in which you're working towards. So I think having short and medium and long term goals is a big way to combat that impulsive spending that a lot of us fall victim to. I think in addition to having all those financial goals, I think it's also important to have that budget. So giving yourself that budget and permission to spend money is important. So I'm not saying, if you're on a debt free journey, you can't enjoy your life in the moment, because I think there is a balance to this, because at the end of the day, life is a journey and you still do need to live whilst you're also trying to pay down that debt. But I do think there needs to be some kind of a cap on it. So if you set yourself a fund allowance of, I don't know, £100 for the month, for example, that money you can then spend without the guilty feeling that you get when you're spending money that you shouldn't be spending. If you've been proactive in allocating that money for that specific purpose, then you can just enjoy that money guilt free. So I think having a plan for your money is so important. So budgeting, so having those categories, like I said, so all your expenses are covered, you know exactly where all your money is going. You've got a plan for that money, so that money isn't just slipping through your fingers. I think will also help with that impulse spending. That will also help with that impulse spending. And I think also just facing your front, I say that a lot online. And what that looks like is kind of focusing on your journey and your path and what's important to you. Because I think a lot of times we can be distracted by what we see other people doing online. and we are influenced to make purchasing decisions that are not necessarily in alignment with our goals and our priorities and our values. But we do it because we think that that's what we're supposed to be doing, because we see other people doing it online, when actually if we just face our front and focus on what's important to us and our goals that we are pursuing, we don't necessarily end up spending money in a way that we would have if we weren't facing our front.
I've been a victim of that. Seeing that my friends are going on holiday and I'm thinking, okay, I think it's time to go on holiday, but
Yes.
you need to remember actually what was your goal and is that
Yes.
aligned with your overall goal, which is difficult to do. But yeah, as you said, if you just kind of remember that, then you can reel it back in. Yeah, great point. And I watched one of your videos when you were explaining the journey that you did and you used zero-based budgeting, of which we'll also link that video because I feel like you shared so many great tips. But if you don't mind summarizing for people that are watching right now, the approach that you took to kind of then clear that debt with the zero-based budgeting.
Absolutely. So the zero-based budgeting method is a budgeting method that I learned from Dave Ramsey, but it's quite a popular method. I don't know if he originated it or created it, but it's essentially a budgeting method where you write all of your income down and you write all of your expenses and you make a plan for every single penny that you earn that month. So whether it's you work a part-time job and you have a full-time job, and you have a side hustle, you have those 3 different income streams, you write them all in your budget. And then you write all your different expense categories. So that could be your more, your rent, your council tax, your utilities, your food, etc. You write all of those expenses down on that same budget sheet and you allocate money from that income to your expenses until you get to a balance of zero. And you do this before you spend the money. So on payday, before any penny gets spent, you make a plan for every single penny that comes into your account. And doing this helps you to not waste money. It makes you be intentional with what you put your money to, because when I was on my debt-free journey, or before I even embarked on my debt-free journey, I thought I had an income problem, but actually what I had was a spending problem. Because I didn't have a plan for that money was just slipping through my fingers and I wasn't realizing how much money I was wasting. But creating that budget and creating that plan for the money really helped me to become intentional with what I put my money to, because now I'm telling my money where to go as opposed to the money just disappearing at the end of the month. It's a few days payday and I'm like, I have no money. Where's all my money gone? And it's because I wasn't proactive with planning for it.
A lot of people need to hear that. You need to be intentional with where your money is going, and appropriate actually, because we're recording this on the last day of the month. So
Yeah.
it definitely should be something that you do on a monthly basis, especially if things are kind of getting a little bit hard. And the cost of living now, it just keeps increasing. Therefore, I think a lot of people need to be intentional about creating that budget. But you took the zero-based budget. That's like the extreme. Is that something that you've kept going since then, even now?
I would love to say I have kept it going, but the truth is that I haven't, because when I was on that debt-free journey, I was a lot more strict with where my money was going. Now we budget a lot more loosely, so we don't plan every penny to the T. Although saying that, I do want to go back to that method of budgeting, but at the moment, life is just very busy and I just don't have the capacity and the time to focus on it in that way. But it is a brilliant tool for anybody wanting to embark on a debt-free journey and wanting to get really on top of where their money is going. That zero-based budget, it might be a bit time consuming at first setting it all up, but it really does help you to get a hold of where your money's going. And yeah, you find that you don't waste money a lot when you use that method of budgeting.
Kind of like when you are on a kind of losing weight journey, right? At the start, you're like, okay, I'm just going to eat really clean and kind of cut loads of things. And then you reach a certain goal and then you can be a little bit loose with yourself because we can't do it for the rest of our lives. But in that period that you're like, things need to change, I think it's a great way to just kind of cleanse everything. So I hope
Absolutely.
people try it out. And in terms of like the sacrifices that, you might have made, and again, if you don't mind sharing kind of how you had those conversations as a family in terms of what you're going to sacrifice, was it the holidays maybe that you were taking at that point, or maybe scaling down on the renovations once you'd moved in? Do you mind sharing which ones you took?
Yeah, sure. So one of the sacrifices that we made, like you mentioned, was in terms of traveling. So we didn't go on holiday again until last year. Yeah, we didn't go on holiday as a family again until 2024. And that was all the way back in 2018 when we finished paying off that debt. So we took a long hiatus from traveling to pay off that debt. And once we paid it off, there was other things that we were working towards, which meant that holiday wasn't a priority at that time. So it took a few years before we were able to travel again as a family. And that's the kind of thing you have to do when you're on that debt-free journey. It is make sacrifices for today, for the tomorrow that you want. So in the moment, it does feel a bit painful, but you have to stay focused on the bigger picture and where you're trying to get to. I know that, okay, right now I'm making these sacrifices, but later on, future me is going to be thanking me for those sacrifices that I made. I think I lost the actual initial questions. What was your initial question?
No,
Sorry.
that
I feel
you
like I didn't
really
fully
did
answer it.
answer. You definitely answered it in terms of like the sacrifices that you took were maybe less holidays at that point. And that's a
Yeah, those
long
small
time
breaks.
to do that, especially if it's something that you had enjoyed at a time. But as you said, you knew what your goals were, therefore you sacrificed that. And I think the second part of my question was the conversation that you'd have with your partner to make the sacrifices. Because sometimes you could have someone who wants to spend a bit more,
Mm.
but you are the one that's like, no, we need to focus on this. And how do you navigate that so that you're on the same page?
Sure. So just adding a few more sacrifices that we made then. So yes, to the travel, that was one of the sacrifices. But on a day to day, I think one of the sacrifices that we made was where we were shopping. So for example, before going on that debt-free journey, I used to have the online Tesco order delivery delivered to my house. But when we were on that debt-free journey, I had to humble myself and carry my car and my shopping bags to Aldi and shop in Aldi. So before, I used to be quite a brand snob when it came to food. There were certain things that I wouldn't buy because it wasn't the designer food brands. But again, when I was on that debt-free journey, I just had to try those alternative brands. And for the most part, a lot of them are much better or just as good as the original brand that you're used to buying. So it was just making those brand switches, switching where I was shopping, also not being too available. So before, I was that person. If you invite me to your birthday, I'm coming. Wherever you invite me to go, I'm going to go and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to pay for it later on. But when we were on that debt free journey, we had to be less available and say no to things that we ordinarily would say yes to taking part in. And conversation wise, I think I was fortunate in the fact that my husband was the one that introduced the debt free journey to me in the first place. So it was more him getting me on board as opposed to me getting him on board, which is funny because I'm the one that now has the platform talking
Yeah.
about personal finance. But I never would have started this journey had he not told me about this book by Dave Ramsey and not initiated the whole debt free journey for our family. So we were fortunate in that part that we both were on the same page, wanting to pay off this debt and having that self belief that we could do it together as a team. So we had each other to champion each other on that journey. So we were fortunate in that part.
Well, that's good because maybe the groundwork is already done before that point in terms of the communication there. And if you're on the same page, then that's great. But I suppose people can learn from, as you said, like taking away judgment before if you're going to have a certain conversation with someone and then seeing if you guys are aligned on your goals overall, because then the conversation will be easy for them. Yeah. Switching gears a little bit in terms of the financial education piece, you've got a family and you've got children. I just wanted to ask the conversations that you do have with them to just teach them a little bit about money management, especially as a financial educator. Are you educating them?
Absolutely, yes. Educating them. Sometimes I feel like I might be educating them too much, and I am conscious of not making them have limiting beliefs around money or, having a scarcity mindset about money. But I do teach them the value of a pound. So for us, what that looks like is from very young, we've introduced them to the concept of spend, save, give. So any money that they receive, whether it's birthday, Christmas, whatever the occasion is, they have to divide it up into three. So they have a pot, they have three money pots. One's for spending, one's for saving, and one's for giving. And they put a percentage in each jar. And it's always been like that. So sometimes they might want to save more, sometimes they might want to give more. But it's just letting them understand or making them understand that every money that enters your hand, you don't have to spend it all. You do need to be intentional with what you do with that money. So that's something we've been teaching them for young and they're really good with now, to be honest. Another thing that we taught them is just understanding the value of a pound when you're shopping. So not just buying what you want when you see it, but actually understanding price comparison. So for example, in the supermarket, what that looks like is when we're going around the grocery stores, showing them the different prices of items. So for example, ketchup, showing them that, okay, these two are both ketchup, but one's designer and one is store brand. Look at the price difference, but is there much of a taste difference? No. So why do we need to necessarily buy the more expensive one when we can buy the one that's more affordable, because we're making our money work better for us? So it's not to say that, we always have to go for the cheapest all the time. So that's not what I'm trying to teach them, but actually it's to save the money on the things that are not so important to you, so that you have money to put towards the things that you actually really want to buy and spend your money on. So those are some of the money lessons that we've been teaching our boys. And it's so funny, even like when we go to toy stores, for example, like they love to go to Smith's Toys after Christmas or after their birthday, and just knowing the budget that they have, so then they can go into the store and look at the shelves and see the different prices, and they're able to understand, okay, I can't afford to buy that right now with the money I've got, but if I really want it, I can save up for a couple of months to be able to come back and buy it, or I could just go for an alternative, which is within my budget, and I can have it now. So teaching them the concept of delayed gratification as well. So all of these things are some money lessons that we're teaching them now. And I think we've definitely come a long way, because at the beginning, when we used to go to that toy store, it used to be loads of meltdowns because I want what I want. I don't care about how much it costs. Just let me have it. But I think as they're getting older, they're starting to understand the differences and understanding, okay, this is our budget and this is what we can get with it. And understanding that, okay, it doesn't mean I can't ever have it. It just means I need to save up a little bit more before I can get it.
Those are the lessons, and it starts now, to be
Yeah.
honest, because as you said, okay, fine, at the start, they're meltdowns, all right, but then they're understanding with all the kind of information that you're giving them, and they are understanding, like, actually, I can have it later on, because I'm getting scared of the buy now, pay later Klarna situation where it's accessible to quite a lot of people that are really young, and it's getting them into really bad situations, and accumulating debt that they can't pay back. And this happens at an age where if they haven't learned certain things at a younger age, and then now you're a teenager, I'm just scared about where everything is going. So I'm glad that you're already teaching, your boys now about delayed gratification, because if you just wait 1 or 2 months, then you can afford it. But right now we just want it immediately. I don't know if you've noticed that in the financial education space, that a lot of people.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's actually an epidemic. It's quite scary. The things that you can now do buy now, pay later for food, for crying out loud. Why do we need to pay later for our food? And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm saying this for grocery stores, because, yes, the cost of living is so high that people are having to do things to that extreme of buying their groceries on credit, for example. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about Uber Eats. Like, if we're saying that we're, struggling for cash, we have no business being on Uber Eats, buying takeaway and doing a 4-month payment plan for that takeaway. We could just avoid getting it all together and go to the supermarket and buy our food. But I think because it's being presented to us as the easy option, and everywhere now where you shop, that is an option for you to do it in a payment plan. People are just taking out credit on things that they ordinarily wouldn't even think to do, because they're thinking, oh, it's only this amount that I'm paying now. But it adds up so quickly over time. And those little payments over time, when you keep adding to them, become very big payments. And then it's all well and good when you say it's interest free. But the moment you don't make that payment on time, we know that you're paying a lot more, right, in interest. So I think, yeah, it's scary, and it's the targeting as well. They're targeting younger people with those marketing messages. And yeah, for me, I'm not keen on it, to be honest. I don't like it. And even in the financial education space, I feel like we do have a duty of care to not be promoting these kind of products to younger people, because they're not handling that credit. Or let me not generalize, but a lot of the times they're not handling that credit responsibly. So why do we want to be pushing this on them?
I mean, how could they? This is probably the first credit for them. And they're like, okay, yeah, this is easy. I can just pay it later. And we haven't, I don't think, living in the UK, I don't think that financial education is being given widely to young people for them to truly understand what that actually means. And I'm glad that people can start at home. And I think it needs to happen in schools as well. And there just needs to be better regulation around buy now, pay later, for sure. It is never too early to start planning for your retirement. And that's where our sponsor, Pension Bee, comes in. Pension Bee are on a mission to build pension confidence and create a world where everyone can enjoy a happy retirement. Whether you've moved around jobs a lot and are looking to consolidate your pension into one easy to manage plan, or you're self-employed looking for a flexible pension plan which allows you to contribute as much or as little as you like depending on your income. It's easy to sign up, and you can do this via the link in the show notes. So, what are you waiting for? Take control of your retirement today, and remember, when investing, your capital is at risk.
No, I definitely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now that's amongst, spending. Are there any kind of tips as well that you can give around saving or investing for young people as well? I don't know if you've broached that yet with your boys.
Yes. So I think it goes back to what I was teaching them earlier in terms of save, invest, and spend. But I think it's also the idea of pay yourself first. So any money that you do get, give yourself a percentage first before you start spending on other things. So even if you don't want to do the zero-based budgeting method that we mentioned earlier, the one thing that you can do is pay yourself first out of any income you receive before you start spending the rest of it, so that you can now take that money and start investing in yourself. And that investing can be in investing in education so that you can learn ways to grow that money. It can be investing in your stocks and shares ISA account, again, so that that money can grow that way. But I think just having that money set aside to invest, I think will help you in terms of wealth building and growing for your future self. Because I think when it goes back to that zero-based budget, for example, if you're budgeting all of that money to be spent and none of it's going towards saving for your future or investing in your future, then you're not going to ever be able to really progress and move forward. And then what I would say as well to that is, if you are in that position where you've created this zero-based budget, for example, and you don't see any money to save for yourself or to pay yourself first or to invest, then you really need to do some evaluation in terms of your financial situation. Like, what can you do to change that so that you can have money to put towards your future self? Because things are not going to change unless you make some changes. So what that could look like is skilling up. So maybe getting an extra qualification or an online course, doing some online learning. So going back to that 10% that we're investing in learning a new skill, which you can then maybe monetize on the side. Or even in your workplace currently, maybe looking for promotions or looking to skill up within the workplace so that you can eventually move on from that job to a job that pays more. But basically looking at how you can increase your income if there's no gap between your income and your expense, if there's no gap between your income and your expenses at present.
Great tips. I actually just thought of a different question than the one that I was about to ask in terms of what you just mentioned, when someone skills up and has a side hustle. Because a lot of people, because I do accounting as well, and a lot of people are thinking of jumping from their main role into their side hustle because their side hustle has actually gone really well. Is that something you can share on for like how people can make that decision to jump from the main job to a side hustle and make that their main job?
It's definitely something you can do. I know so many people that have been able and fortunate to do that. But what I would say is, don't do it prematurely. So I think what people do sometimes is they get a bit excited too soon. So it's like, you've started this business and you had a great month and you're like, yes, I can quit my job and just do this business full time. But, you haven't got that run rate yet. You haven't done it for 6 months and consistently generated that income to replace your 9 to 5 job. So it might be too quick a jump to make so soon. But again, I would say as well, actually, that everyone's situation is different. So I think when you're younger or you don't have dependents or you don't have as much financial responsibilities, maybe you're still living at home, I think that your appetite for risk can be a lot higher because the fallout of you not taking that risk or that risk going bad isn't as high as if, say, you're someone like in my position, for example. I have 4 children. I can't just risk it all, be like, yep, I'm going to quit my job and just throw myself into my business overnight because I've got these dependents. If it doesn't work out, then what happens? I think it's definitely a individual thing that you need to evaluate where you are and the risk versus reward. So if the risk is too high, do you want to take that jump just yet? But then equally, I think no matter where you are in your life, I think there does need to be an element of wisdom applied to what you're doing. So I wouldn't say quit that job after a month or two of seeing an income from it. I would say maybe get at least 6 months down the line of that consistent income, and then also build that emergency fund as well. So if that's something you don't have in place, so an emergency fund, for those that may not know, is basically a pot of cash that you have should your income go, for example, an emergency situation arise, money that you can fall back on that's not credit. So if you have 3 months emergency fund, then that means you could potentially quit your job and be okay for 3 months, or you could do it for 6 months, 7 months, a year. I know people that have 1 year's worth of emergency fund. So that means that, yes, you can, after 2 months, quit your job because you have a year's worth of income to fall back on and use. So I think there's just a little bit of planning that needs to go into it and preparing yourself for all eventualities before quitting your 9 to 5 and jumping in that side project. And I don't think it's something everyone just needs to necessarily jump in and do. I think, yeah, there's a lot of planning that should go into it and do what makes sense for you financially, but don't be just led astray by what you see online sometimes, because I think there is a lot of content out there that makes it look like, you could just become successful overnight in your business if you quit your job tomorrow. And that isn't most people's story. So definitely apply a bit of wisdom, I would say.
A lot of people have worked for 10 years to get to that stage where you can see that result. And when you were talking, I learnt it the hard way as well, even though I'm like financial education as well. I'm an accountant. But when I jumped from my main role, I worked for a telecommunications company, and I was like, okay, I've saved up. I'd saved up 6 months worth. And I thought, okay, I could always jump back into another role as soon as the money starts to kind of go. I know I'm earning a certain amount. However, contract it was cut short once I'd started to be full-time business owner. And then our boiler broke, and that meant K came out of my bank account. And that was it. So I was like, okay, well, thought that I had so much padding. And as you were saying, you need a certain run rate. And I think minimum actually has to be 12 months, rather than the 6 months that I went with. I thought I was really smart and I'd prepared for everything. But, yeah, when you least expect it, that's when you really need that emergency fund. I thought I'd just be open there and share to everybody.
No, amazing. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And that is the reality of it, right? Trying to be an entrepreneur is like life still has to happen as well on the side of it. So even if the business is doing great and you're making money, life expenses can still arise. And what do you do when £1,000 bill comes your way? It's like I hadn't factored into that. Yes, I had my emergency fund, but I didn't think I was going to have to use 4K of it for a
Yeah.
boiler. So, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally hear that.
The joys of adulting. As you said, if
Listen,
you've got responsibilities, then you really need to prepare.
yes, that part. Oh my gosh, 4K for a boiler. See, my husband's a gas engineer, so that's one thing that's great that we don't have to worry about. But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, but
So
oh no,
lucky.
home ownership is expensive stuff. Gosh, this is not something that you should enter lightly at all.
Yeah, it's a blessing, but you have to be resilient when you
Yes.
start the journey. And in terms of like your audience, I've noticed that your platform helps women and mums as well. What has been the response to supporting them since you started the financial education?
The response has been really interesting, actually. You don't realize the impact that you're having when you create content online, because you're just creating it and posting it. And yeah, people leave comments and stuff here and there on the post, but you don't realize the real life impact that you have on people until you get those messages. So DMs and emails. I remember a couple of years ago, I was nominated for an award. So it was like Financial Influence of the Year, something like that anyway. And they sent across the feedback, so the entries, they sent us all the entries or nominations that I'd received, and seeing the comments that people left there, I almost wanted to cry. I was like, wow, I didn't realize I've had this impact on people. So comments like, thanks to Tolu's content, I've saved £10,000. I've paid off £5,000 debt. Thanks to Tolu, I've started budgeting. I've been able to take my children on holiday for the first time. Like, all of these comments were coming in on the nominations. And these are people that have never told me these things. And it blew my mind, because I was like, wow, it's really having an impact. These are not even one-to-one clients that I've worked with and seen the transformation with directly. These are people that are just seeing my content online and listening to a podcast or watching my YouTube channel or wherever it is. And they're making these changes and they're seeing the results of these changes. So it's pretty amazing, to be honest. I'm like, wow, just little old me here creating content online, sharing my journey. And this is the impact it's been able to have on other people's journeys in life. So it's very, very, very rewarding. And it's brilliant. It's just brilliant hearing that feedback and knowing that, I make a difference in people's lives. So yeah, it's good.
You truly are. You truly are. I think like just on different aspects there, like the information that you're giving, as also you're being open about your journey too, then you give a lot of people confidence, especially women. We need confidence when it comes to a lot of aspects of our lives, especially money. So I'm so glad that then you got your flowers, like people told you like the impact that you're making, especially for those hard times. As a podcaster too, when you're like, right, I need to edit this and rush this out, and but you know that it's actually helping people. So I'm glad that you got that feedback.
No, thank you. No, it is brilliant. It'd be nice if more people give that feedback. But that's just life, right? People just watch and they're taking it in and they're applying stuff, but they might not necessarily tell you the impact it's having. But you just, just do what you've got to do. And those that it's going to impact, it will impact. Not everyone's going to come back and tell you, but at least you just know you're doing your part. And whatever happens with the rest happens with the rest.
Exactly, exactly. I did want to touch on like the digital marketing side of things.
Sure.
Has that supported your journey with kind of putting out the content that you do, with digital marketing? Have you merged the two?
I definitely say it's helped me a lot in terms of content creation, right? So in my day job as a marketer, that's the kind of thing that I was doing, but for my company, whereas now I do it for my own platform. So it has helped me in terms of my creativity, my content writing, messaging, even like my email marketing. All of that is stuff that I've been doing in my day job over the years. So it was easy to transition those skills to then help me in this space, even with my website and all the SEO stuff. Again, search engine optimization, this is stuff that I did in my day job. So it helped me to be able to do the same on my website and even building the website. And it's so funny because certain skills that you develop over the years that become second nature to you, it's only when you have conversations with people that don't do that for a living or have no experience in it, and you realize, oh, this is actually a valuable skill that I have, because it's just something you do, but you don't realize, oh no, actually, this is a skill that some people don't have. So it's a good thing. But I think for me, sometimes I take it for granted, those skills that I have developed from my day job, because things that I just do and I think are second nature, it's like, no, actually, this is not a normal thing that you're just doing. So yeah, it's definitely helped me, I'd say, a lot on my with my content creation and everything I do on my personal brand platform, for sure.
Yeah, I think we go through our lives and think, okay, I've done this and then I'm moving on to something else, not knowing that that journey that you're going through, it's going to help you with a decision that you're going to make later on. And I wanted to touch on pivoting, because, you know, you then pivoted into financial education, but I'm glad that you're doing both at the same time right now. A lot of people think that it could be too late to do something, especially women. We feel like, okay, I should have done that in my 20s and become 30 under 30, but it's too late for me to like go after a certain dream. How was that for you to go after a completely different career choice, essentially? Was there anything that helped you with the confidence to just jump into it?
To be honest, yeah, I'd say my journey is a bit different to someone making that career pivot in the way that you're explaining it, because I didn't consciously make that decision to pivot. It was more, I was doing my job in marketing as my day job. That's what I've always done. And the financial education stuff, when I started, it wasn't supposed to be a business. I didn't start it out as a business. It was more me just sharing what I'd done online. And then it kind of grew organically from there. So when I started posting on my Instagram and my blog, I didn't think it was going to turn into what it turned into. So it's not something I had planned to do, if that makes sense. I never thought, oh yeah, I've been in marketing all my life, let me pivot into finance. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because I did marketing at university, right, as a degree. And the one module that I failed was financial accounting. And that's because me and numbers just didn't go together. That's why it's so ironic now that I'm in this space, because I never thought finance and me went together. So no, it's not something I had planned to do, but it's something I kind of organically, I guess, fell into. And as I've been doing it more, I've kind of been growing and learning and researching and becoming, I guess, better and more competent at the topic of finance. And I guess the lesson here I would share with your listeners is that don't write yourself off. Like, there's always something you can learn. You can learn. We can always learn and we can always grow. So just because you wasn't good at something in the beginning doesn't mean you can't become good at it. You can learn whatever skill you want to learn if you apply yourself to it. So I think, yeah, for me, I thought finance, I was never good at it, but fast forward, I've been applying myself and now I'm getting better at it. I'm still not the best, but I think I've done okay for the time being. So definitely you can do whatever you want to do. Like, it's like that saying, right? the best time to plant a tree was like 100 years ago, and the second best time is today, right? It's now. So just because you've been in whatever career you've been in or whatever field you've been in for the past 20, today's a new day. You can decide today that actually I want to become an astronaut tomorrow. Okay, that was so random. But whatever it is, you can decide that this is the path I now want to embark on. And what does that look like? You start researching it. What skills do I need to do? What qualifications do I need to do? And begin that journey. So yes, you may not make the 30 under 30, but you make the 30 under 40 or 40 under 40 or whatever the list is for the next age bracket. So just don't write yourself off. Like, your life is going to go past regardless, right? We're going to get older. Time is going to pass. So you can either just say, start doing the same thing for the next 20 years because that's what you've done for the previous 20 years. Or you can make that decision today that the next 20 years, I want to be here and I'm going to start taking those steps from today to get there. Rant over.
Great one, to be honest with you, because you better start. You better start as soon
Yeah.
as you feel like, right, this is my idea, because that idea will bounce to somebody else, and you will, oh no, that was my idea, and they're doing it now. You don't want to live with regret. So
Yeah.
yeah, start now. Great, great advice. And in like kind of maybe sticking to the moms and women, in terms of them juggling stuff. When we were offline, I was just asking you about how you manage to juggle things, and even whatever that looks like, because a lot of moms might feel like, I really want to do this, but I can't because I need to focus on XYZ. How have you managed to juggle, and is there any advice you can give to some moms?
Okay, how do you do it all? I guess I would say the truth is that you can't do it all at the same time. I think that's the mistake that a lot of us fall into, or the trap that we fall into, that we want to be able to do it all simultaneously, and you just can't. You can't do it all well at the same time. So it's a case of prioritizing what needs to be prioritized at that time and working on things in blocks. So what that may look like is, okay, I can take my kids to school every day, but maybe I can't pick them up every day, or I can go to their assemblies, but I might not be able to make it for that parents' evening. Whatever it looks like for you, it's like there's going to be a trade off. So you just have to make the trade offs that you feel comfortable and confident in. So if you want to be that full time stay at home mum, totally devoted to your children, then realistically, how are you going to have that time to build that business? You're going to have to make sacrifices here and there. So it's just a case of measuring the sacrifices that you're willing to make. But I think the problem lies in us thinking that I'm going to be the best at every single job all the time. You lead to burnout because you just can't do it all extremely well at the same time. Like, you're one person, you can't be in two places at the same time. You can't focus on two things at the same time. I know we always say that, women are great multitaskers, and we are to an extent, but your brain can only focus on one thing at a time, is the reality. So as much as you think you're multitasking, you're actually only focused on one of those things at that time. The other things you're just doing without even thinking about it. So I think it's being a bit more gracious to ourselves as mums and just accepting that we can't do everything at the same time. So I know I'm repeating myself, but I just want to hammer that point home, that it's okay to prioritize and manage our time in a way that works for our family. So it might look like I said, being 100% devoted to the kids, maybe in the daytime, and in the evening, taking that time to work on whatever project you want to work on, and having your husband or partner or family member watch the kids or put them to bed. Whatever it looks like, finding juggling it in a way that works for you and your household, and do it in a way that you are not looking at what other people are doing. Because I think a lot of the self a lot of the self-criticism that we have is from external people, external factors, or from looking at what we see others people doing and looking at advice that we see online. Like, there's experts across the field, right, telling you how you should parent, telling you how you should raise your children, telling you how you should run your home, how you should run your lives. Like, there's an expert for everything you could think of. There's experts telling you how to fold your clothes, for crying out loud. Like, there's literally an expert for everything. So I think we need to maybe block out that noise. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about facing your front. I think the same applies to how we build our homes as well, and how we nurture our children, and how we pursue entrepreneurship. It is a case of cultivating an environment that works well for you and your family, and making sure that you and your partner, if you have one, are in alignment with what you're doing and the goal that you're pursuing, and not being distracted by what you see people doing on your left and your right.
you're on your own journey, right?
Yes.
So brilliant, brilliant. And I noticed that you've got an ebook, that you have outlined your 10 steps to debt freedom, which is great. We'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes as well. But I'm going to ask you, like, which step do you think was the most transformative for you, and what's mostly overlooked as well? Which specific step?
Sure. I'd say of the steps, I think the one that was the most transformational for us is creating that budget. So I think it's that creating a plan for our money, something like I mentioned earlier that we hadn't done up until that point. And so before creating a budget, we thought we had an income problem, but we in the end found out we had a spending problem. So it wasn't a case of how much we earned, it was a case of what we were doing with the money that we earned. And that budget allowed us to have that clarity and have that full picture of what was happening with our money, and then making an intentional plan for it moving forward. So I think creating that budget gave us that empowerment that we needed to be able to pursue that debt-free journey. So I'd say that definitely was a big part of it. And then I would say also the money mindset was so important as well, because I think as a man thinketh, so he is, right? So I think that if you believe you can achieve it, you can achieve it. But equally, if you believe you can't, you can't. And I know it sounds so simple and airy fairy, but it is the truth. Like if you have already told yourself that I can't pay off this debt, it's impossible, you've shut off any opportunity to make it a reality, because straight away your brain is not even looking for answers. You're not even thinking of ways to creatively start paying off that debt because you've already accepted that I can't do it. So I think it is a repositioning of the way we think about our situation and telling ourselves that we can do it, and start looking for solutions internally as to how we can make it a reality. And you'll be so surprised that when you start thinking of, okay, how can I do this? How your brain starts coming up with ideas that you may not have considered had you not have started believing that you can make it a reality.
I know you said it sounds airy fairy. I'm all about that. We could talk for 2 hours about kind of like the power of your mind and mindsets, because sometimes I felt like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to achieve this. And, I really want to do X, Y, Z. And then all of a sudden from somewhere, maybe so I get a LinkedIn message for someone who wants to collaborate on that specific thing. So as you said, your brain looks for opportunities, and sometimes you just open it up so then opportunities can come to you too. So I'm glad you shared, and I could
Yeah.
go all the way down there.
Yeah.
But you're sharing the more practical steps, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. And people can definitely go and look into like your ebook and then follow each step along as
Definitely.
well. Brilliant. And in terms of looking ahead, because we've talked about your past and everything you've learned and what you're teaching as well. Are there any upcoming projects that you're working on right now?
So upcoming projects is just me continuing with the podcast. So not another money podcast, bringing it back with some more guests and some more interesting episodes talking about all things money. I've also got the blog on my website, tolufrimpong.com, where I share like weekly blog posts with across various money topics, and then just creating content online a bit more and doing more workshops like I do already. So just more of the same stuff that I do. And in the future, hopefully, maybe within the next year or so, it would be amazing to do like an in-person event. So to be fair, I already do like my vision board workshops around Christmas time, but actually doing a bigger like in-person event with like hundreds of women, I think would be pretty incredible. But what that looks like is still to be decided. It's just an idea, but it's something I would love to pursue over the next year or so.
Definitely invite us on that kind of in-person event. Definitely will be really great. I have had a great time talking to you and learning about your journey. The last question, really, you did mention a book already, but we do ask our guests, and you can repeat that book if you want. We do ask our guests a book that they can recommend to people to continue on their financial education, or just a book about anything, really doesn't have to be about finances. Do you have one you can recommend?
There's a few, so I'm like, which one should I mention? Okay, I'll just mention a couple actually. So, The Psychology of Money is a brilliant book. I can't remember the author's name, but The Psychology of Money, if you type it up, I'm pretty sure his book will come up straight away. But it's a really, really, really good book. And then Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin is a great book. There's similar threads in those two books, but both Your Money or Your Life is like an older version of it, but both really good books that I would definitely say to check out.
great. Thank you so much for sharing. And you've shared kind of how people can get in touch with you on LinkedIn, hopefully your website and yours on social media too. Is there any other?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
so that Tolu Frimpong across all platforms. And then the podcast is Not Enough Money Podcast. And then, yes, on LinkedIn as well, you can connect with me, Tolu Frimpong. And yeah, I don't think there's another Tolu Frimpong on there. So you should be able to connect with me quite easily.
Amazing. I've had such a great time talking to you. Thank you for your time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting further in the future.
No, thank you for having me, Arlyne. It's been amazing.
That is all for us today, guys. Join us next week for some more seeds to sow. And please remember to support us by following and leave a rating on our show on whichever platform you're listening to us from. To those watching on YouTube, please leave a like and a subscribe to our channel. All of your support goes a long way. Thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, keep shining.